Welcome to the Next Chapter Podcast. I'm host Andrea Hecht of Fully Informed Life. I am a professional life coach, educator, and storyteller, and I help women really navigate their journey as they write the next chapters in their life. This podcast is all about featuring women who are on their journey and have inspiring stories to share. So today I am here with Samantha Kestin. I'm so excited to be able to introduce Samantha to this community. She is super inspiring, and it's really a fun story how we met each other. During the pandemic, my daughter was supposed to attend her first summer of sleepaway camp, and unfortunately, life shut down. But thanks to Samantha and her wonderful baking classes, she really inspired my daughter to have a love of baking. She taught classes online, and my daughter took every single class. And through Samantha's inspiration and great teaching skills, Sienna then was able to create her own baking adventure and taught other kids how to bake, and ended up raising $10,000 for different charities. So, of course, this isn't all about my daughter, but I wanted to give a shout out to Samantha and her wonderful teaching skills and how she really inspired my daughter to have a love for baking in the kitchen. So before we jump ahead to, too far into the story, I wanted to be able to ask you one question: that what is something that you can share with the audience that they might not be able to find on Google if they Googled you? What's a crazy story or something cool about?
Well, first of all, I want to say hi and thanks so much for having me on this podcast and discussion today. So I've had a great time getting to know you and your daughter over the last few years, and it was great to finally meet you in person after all that virtual back and forth. It's really awesome to be able to make connections with people through Zoom, as we all found out over the last few years. Something we never could have done, a handful of years ago. So I'm really thankful for that. And I've met wonderful people over that time, and we've learned to bake and form relationships together over that time. I know before we start into talking a little bit more about my baking adventures and business stuff, you had asked me a little silly something, and I was kind of thinking about what's something that someone would not know about me. But back in the day, before I was Sweet Samantha, before I was a mom, before I was a wife, I used to kind of just push myself to do some fun things. And I went to school in Long Island, so I would go into New York every now and then. And I just kind of decided, hey, it'd be so fun to do some acting stuff. And I just sort of threw myself into one of those random talent agency places. And one day I got a call, and I was asked to be on a George Michael, Whitney Houston video.
That is amazing.
So I know nothing about dancing. I'm not a dancer or anything, but for 2 or 3 days, we met and we worked all night, and I got to be in the background of this video. And there's definitely a shot where George Michael starts to sing, and I'm walking right next to him, and you can fully see me in my orange tank top. And it's kind of a cool little fact. The song is called "If I Told You That," and I love to share that. And it was great to spend that time with Whitney Houston, who's like, woo. And, it was a really cool little fact of my youth that I get to share.
I love that. And it also kind of springboards into the rest of our conversation, and something that you really take to heart is that you aren't afraid to try new things, and that you seek out different opportunities. And when they happen to come your way, that you're not afraid to go after it. And so that's really admiring.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like creativity and enjoying your life and having fun really does translate into every path that you take. And for myself, I feel like it's really been a driving force and factor into my business, into my personal life, into my family. And really, I feel like the path to my happiness is being able to recognize, hey, let's do something out of the ordinary within reason. I'm not skydiving or doing anything kooky like that, but well, to some people. But for me, I'm a safe, I'm a moderate, safe new risk taker, I guess. All kinds of just interesting and creative stuff that I try to be a part of, and I find that those are the coolest memories that I have of really doing things out of my comfort zone.
Which that's huge. So speaking of comfort zone, let's go back to the beginning of kind of your professional journey. And if you can share where you started, because it wasn't as Sweet Samantha as you're known now, but if you could kind of take us back to the beginning.
Sure. I always tell people, I found my business by an accident. I had no intentions of being a business owner or starting my company at all. I have a master's in art therapy. So I was an art therapist for a handful of years, and I worked with outpatient psychiatric. So it was a very different career choice at that point. But I loved what I did, and I was young and I was determined. And then at some point it got stressful and emotional for me. And I knew at some point that career path would not help me on my road to happiness, because I felt like I had a connection with the patients, which on one hand is good, and on the other hand was just also, tiring and frustrating when you can only go so far with helping. So I had my son, my firstborn, he was born in 2006. And we moved into my home, and I quit my job, and I became a stay-at-home mom. And the long and short of it was I just started baking a lot because I was home in my house. We had redone our kitchen, and I love sweets. So that was my kind of outlet.
Who doesn't, right?
Love sugar. It's so bad, but I just, that's like my favorite food is cake and cupcakes. And I love art. So I feel like I started experimenting with decorating a little birthday cake for him, a little, just baking cookies and things and pies and stuff every day. And one day I taught a little mommy play group about baking just for fun. Hey, let's get together and I'll show you guys how I do this stuff. And they're all like, you should teach people how to bake. And I was like, maybe, and I just kind of threw it out there. And I started like a little bit, just getting some groups together. And one day I made a fondant cake, and I put it out at a sidewalk sale at a friend who owned a store in Short Hills. And within like an hour, people were like, strangers, where do I buy these cakes from? This looks beautiful. This is delicious. And so I said, okay, I guess it's time to go into business. And I got a business license. I got insurance. I took out some space at just like a local church to bake, and I just kind of went for it. And it just snowballed from there. My cakes got in magazines, many, many different bridal magazines, which was so fun. I used to go to Barnes & Noble on a random day, and I just flipped through all the bridal magazines, any bridal New Jersey magazine. And there was like always a Sweet Samantha cake in there. And I'd call my husband up and be like, eek, one of my cakes is in the magazine again. So that was so fun. And then, fast forward a little bit further, I got on Food Network. I got on a show called Sweet Genius, which was filmed out in New York, and that was so fun. And then a couple years later, I got on Cake Wars, which was amazing, and I got to go to California and do my thing there. And so it's been an incredible journey, and I've evolved to the point now where I did stop doing cakes, but I do love teaching. And I teach private lessons, group classes, special events, corporate events. And I'm literally busy pretty much every day that I want to be busy for. And then I take the time for me. I take my summers off. I travel, I do. And I just really have learned to enjoy my life first, build my business second. Because for me, my priority is still just, finding the balance of being with my family, being there for myself and my husband, and enjoying my life. And then enjoying my business, which I love teaching. So it doesn't, I guess a long time ago, my grandpa used to say, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And
which is so true.
I feel like I've been blessed enough to figure that sweet spot for myself. And I think that Sweet Samantha has been kind of my destiny for now.
It is. And we've been a part of it, and I love being a part of it. So I wanted to step back for a moment and talk a little bit about at the beginning, when you transitioned from art therapy into your, Sweet Samantha role, what kind of thoughts or feelings went through your mind when you talked about it a little bit, but when you were going through that change of, okay, this art therapy is no longer going to serve me. It's no longer going to align with my values. How do I?
So anybody who works in that sort of field of helping people like that, and I guess you can translate that into any helper or medical people or anything. It's a very heavy job, and again, I was still just somewhat on the outside of it, but it's a job where sometimes, unfortunately, the system takes advantage of people's positions, and I was in charge of lots of, different things that I probably shouldn't have been in charge of, medications and all sorts of stuff. And I found myself wanting as a 20-something-year-old to really make a difference in these people's lives and getting a little too personally involved with, bringing things from my home to help them or trying to get them jobs. And I'd come home and I'd cry because it would be sad. And, and I had patients that committed suicide. Unfortunately, I had a patient who, I helped her along to, be independent and have a baby. And then the baby passed away. And there was like all kinds of hardship and sadness that came along with it. And I knew I had a breaking point too when that came to be. So I feel like in any field that you help people like that, I give hats off because it's a hard job to not burn out at. And I can only imagine people who do something for years and years and years like that. So emotionally, I learned a lot about myself and what I could handle. And I knew that for me, long term, that would not lead to happiness because I think I would just feel the empathy too much all the time. I believe in everything about art therapy and therapy in general. And I learned a lot and grew a lot through that career. And then I just, I think sometimes it takes somebody else to give you a little bit of push. So my husband specifically was like, just be happy, man. Just stay home with the baby now. Just do your thing and you'll find your way. And I did. And I feel like it took a little bit of time to recognize that. And people are always like, oh, are you ever going to go back to doing that? And while I don't work in that sort of a serious art therapy field, I feel like what I do daily is kind of the same role a little bit with just, encouraging people to find their happiness and their passion through baking, through creating, and in a way, when you meet people and work one-on-one, not that it becomes like therapy, but like anybody who gets their nails done or their hair done consistently and has a person, it's like, oh, it's like going to therapy. I know this person. She knows all my secrets, whatever. So sometimes I sit with my clients and I feel like I still take on that role just in a little bit more of a fun way. It's just an enjoyable, not sad, daily experience for me. It's a welcoming, soul fulfilling, exercise instead of something that, for me was a little hard to hold on to daily.
Well, I appreciate that because it does take a while. And like you recognize, it took a while for you to be aware that this wasn't going to be your continued path to happiness. And I love how you point out that you are on a journey of happiness, and throughout your life that can evolve, and what makes you happy at one point could be totally different, and that's okay. And I also appreciate how you were able to take those skills that you have from your art therapy background and translate it into something that is, like you mentioned, therapeutic, but in a different way, that's providing you happiness, that's providing the people that you touch with, happiness as well.
And I also feel like I in a way, I think I'm still leaving my footprint and impacting and being a part of people's lives where I your daughter, for example, maybe will grow up one day and remember our sessions and remember that she learned to make lava cake with me.
Not maybe, she will 100%. You are making an impact, and lava cake for sure. She teaches everybody about that. And yes, you are still making an impact.
It feels like I'm like leaving my mark in a small sort of way. And that just feels rewarding to me.
That's great. And like I said, that you were able to take something from the past chapter and bring it forward, but in a way that feels more comfortable for you.
Definitely.
Now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about success and what success kind of means to you. And I know that when we've had previous conversations, it sounds as though your definition of success may have changed from the beginning of your business to where you are kind of now. So if you could kind of share a little bit about
Sure.
your journey.
So I think a lot of young couples and families when they're starting off in their life, might be starting off in different careers, husbands, wives, financial definitions might change over the years. And for us personally, my husband and I, when we were starting off, when we were younger, I now have 3 kids. So not just my boy is now 16. So it's been a while. I have a daughter who's 14 and another daughter who's 10. And in the beginning, we both worked really, really hard. My husband started his own business about 6 years ago now. So life was different, maybe 10 years ago for us. And what I was doing in Sweet Samantha at that time was, again, I was passionate and it was new to me. And I was like, more. How can I build this business? And so I just took on everything and anything, the cakes, the lessons, the classes. And he was starting his company and he was working hard. And the two of us were like passing ships in the night. And we've got these 3 kids. And maybe we went out once a year to dinner by ourselves and that was it. But, we were just, the energy level was different. The ferociousness of wanting to get to a point financially was different. And then as you grow and evolve and change, and luckily, thankfully for both of us, our businesses have become successful with blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm no longer, feeling like, hey, I don't have to make a 3-tiered, cake with a baby on my hip and, trying to cook dinner at the same time and doing 8 million things. I can pick and choose and I can take a step back because we've gotten here and we've done that. And I feel that success being, my cakes getting in the magazines and getting on Food Network for me was a really big, life goal, I guess. And so even if I never did, people are always like, oh, are you going to try to do more TV? Like, I don't know. If it falls in my lap, great. If it doesn't, I'm not seeking it out because I know that won't lead me to further happiness. Sometimes being a part of those shows and things is extremely stressful in itself. I've slowly changed the definition of what I want out of Sweet Samantha. And it's not really just about making money. It's about loving what I do. Sure, making money to some extent because it is a business, but at the same time, not letting work determine my everyday pathway, and taking a break and saying, you know what, you did it, you can chill now. And, just trying to, and a lot of that success I do owe to my husband as well, because he has a successful company. He allows me to be able to take a step back and breathe. And I try to do the same for him. So it's a journey with my partner that we've evolved together to get to where we are now.
Well, I think that that's really important, and to recognize that throughout the journey, what you want out of it can evolve and can certainly change. And I know even you mentioned a little bit about the TV. I know your kids even said to you, Mom, you know what? Why don't you have your own TV show? But you've mentioned that isn't right now what will make you happy, and that you keep that sense of happiness in your journey to happiness at the forefront, which to me, again, is really important, because a lot of people don't have that like central goal, core, or whatever that kind of leads them forward. And it sounds like you really have this sense of happiness, and that's really at the core of your.
And I think for me, like the small scale stuff that I've done is kind of enough, and in my children's eyes, my children will go to school and they'll be like, my mom's a famous baker. She's on TV, or sometimes I'll run these birthday parties and the kids will have seen my episodes and they'll be like, will you sign your autograph on my baking box? And, for me, that's enough. It's kind of like, okay, this is so fun. I don't want to ever be so driven where I would, never be home for my family or have to go to the city every single day and work these exhausting yeah, the famousness would be cool if anybody ever offered it to me. I'd have to like take a step back and think. But, as far as any kind of media stuff goes, I'm content. And I feel like if I do nothing else in my career, I made it, I did it, I'm pleased. And now I'm just happy to kind of chill and take the ride wherever it goes.
Well, I appreciate that positivity that you have in this complete like mental outlook. So can you speak a little bit to how you are able to maintain such positivity?
I think a lot of it is natural. I've always been kind of an optimistic person, even when I was a child. I definitely, my mother used to tell me I look at things through like the rose-colored glasses. I naturally have that sort of disposition, I guess. So I think that I've always been really aware of taking my own time, looking at things. And as an artist, I tend to appreciate things in the world, right? Like colors and shapes, as an example. When you're an artist, you look at things differently, perhaps, than people who just are like going through the motions. So for me, I feel like my challenge for myself as a more mature adult now is not letting go of that side of the artist in myself, even though I don't really paint or sculpt or draw so much anymore. Still having fun for my own self, learning new things, teaching myself new skills, trying to just kind of remain tapping into that, creative and happy and imaginative side as an adult, because we all lose that for sure. And I can't say that I enjoy like playing necessarily children's playing anymore. My daughter will say, "Oh, Mom, will you play Barbies with me?" And I'll be like, "Do I have to? Let's just bake cookies instead."
We can decorate them like a Barbie.
Right. Like, my definition of play as an adult now is certainly different than what it was when I was young. But I love play in the sense where I love to be able to just, anything like even just going out in nature is play to me to some extent, or learning a language. Or we talked about that I was teaching myself piano last year. Yes. I love to just kind of expand my thoughts and my brain. And I think that also leads to happiness. If I find myself focusing on things that are negative, then you're going to be a negative person. So I really, really am intentional about trying to steer my everyday thoughts and life towards happy things. Because if you tell yourself happy thoughts, you're going to be a happier person. Not to say that everyone can like force themselves into happiness, but it's like training your brain to say, hey, like, it's not so bad. Sitting and worrying about something is just futile, and thinking about positive, happy things is going to tell yourself things are good. I believe that everyone has the ability to tap into that and find their own happiness from internal thoughts and behaviors. And even if it's a slow journey, even if it's starting with one step at a time, taking one small change a day. I saw you posted something about loving your froth on your coffee this morning.
Yes.
I love that. It's like looking at something, and that's what I mean by like noticing things and smiling and saying like, hey, I'm not going to just not think about the froth on my coffee. I enjoy that. And yeah, that's going to make me happy, even if it's for 10 minutes while I sit there and drink it and feel warm. And I think that's kind of what life's all about, is just finding those moments daily and not getting too caught up in like the craziness.
I agree. It sounds like, being very intentional with what you're doing with your thoughts, reframing your thoughts to more positive thinking. I work with a lot of my clients and express kind of, I call it the OFT, or one fun thing a day method, kind of like what you were saying, being intentional about finding one fun thing, or maybe if it's not fun, it's one thing that will make you happy, because that's going to fuel you in a positive way. So for me, yes, making my cup of coffee with my frother, I wasn't able to get to the local coffee shop that I like to support. And so that few moments really fueled me. So I think that that's so important.
Sometimes when I was a new mom, I would go to, by me, the Short Hills Mall is like a really nice fancy mall locally. And when my kids were babies and I just was like caught up in the craziness, weekly, I would have a date with myself to just go to the Short Hills Mall in the evening for like an hour when my husband was home, and he knew this. This is my Tuesday night date. I was taking a knitting class at the time with all like older women. I had these like 60, 70 something year old women that were like my best friends at the time because I took a local knitting class because that's something I wanted to learn to do. And I would walk around the mall and I would not really buy anything. I would just feel and smell and look and touch. And I think it brought me so much joy to just stimulate all of my senses in a positive, just indulgent way that you don't even have to spend money to be able to enjoy something like that for yourself. So I kind of encourage my family members or my friends, just go to the mall, just find some not like a crazy rushed mall, like just go somewhere where you're going to like, I don't know, walk around in Tiffany's and look at some diamonds and smell some perfume in Saks Fifth Avenue. And then, what could be bad? You go home and that's fine. So I feel like I think that, but maybe for somebody else, it's not the mall. Maybe it's the woods and looking at leaves or the beach and listening to the waves, whatever floats your boat in that kind of way. I think that's just important and part of our happiness.
Again, I think it's also happiness and living in the moment. And I think that you really do that you're able to stop and really enjoy what is happening around you, because so many people are so focused on the past or so heavily focused on the future. But it sounds as though you really have an intentionality to stay focused in the present, to enjoy what you're doing. And if for some reason something isn't feeling right, that you seek out that moment of happiness.
Yes, my life has not always been, roses and daisies. I feel like there's been moments and, stress and health sickness and all kinds of things. Of course, everyone goes through ups and downs. And I really try hard and I know that tapping into that mentality when things are not perfect is also what helps me to kind of get back centered again. When I needed to.
And we had a conversation around kind of your core values and how having fun and being intentional with your fun and spending time with your family and being there for your children and also filling your own bucket are all important to you. So how do you take those values, your core values, and how have you been able to really make sure that as you are moving forward in your journey, that those are front and center?
I think in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about where I started and where I've come to now. And I think it's always changing. Like what I valued most maybe 10 years ago is a little different than what I value now. And, I don't want this to sound like, I've become selfish, but selfish in a way where I know my role as being mom is going to change very fast. I will always be a mother, but my children, I'll be an empty nester in 7-8 years, and all 3 of my kids will be out of my house. And I always, joke with my husband. I'm like, what am I going to do when I'm not like mom anymore? And he's like, well, then you'll have me and we'll do stuff just us again. And that's so true. And so, my husband and I now, our definition of those core values have become, we're intentionally making them a little bit more about us rather than just about the children, because we know that's going to get there sooner than we think. I love planning vacations. I feel like we are hard vacationers.
Yes.
And that's okay. Like I would much rather invest in adventures than invest in possessions over time. And so, now that the children are old enough to come with us and do cool things. And we are looking forward to going a little further and taking a little longer and doing more exotic, cool stuff with them and also one day without them. And so, I think that's kind of where my intentions are going as far as focusing more on myself, my husband, and our future, guiding my kids, giving them wings to fly, always allowing them to come back and be a part of our world, but not remembering that they will want their own identities too, and they are going to need to break away from us, and that's okay. And it's a little hard to take as a mom.
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of, where we're at with that. And I feel like the future's coming there, and keeping my business afloat and doing something for myself rather than only just having the role as mom is an important thing in my life.
For sure. And I wanted to just point out that you kind of hesitated and said, oh, it might sound selfish that you're focusing on, yourself and putting your needs forward. And I think that that's an important thing to point out, that a lot of women and people in general feel that when you fill your bucket first, that there's judgment around it being selfish. And, there's that old saying, on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. But it's true. You need to feel fulfilled before you have enough to give to others. So I think that that's super important to point out. So kind of as we reach towards the end of our conversation, I could talk to you forever. I am curious if there is one important gem that you would want listeners to really walk away with, knowing as they are focusing on their next page. Let's not even talk about the whole chapter of their journey, but their next page. What is one thing that you would like the listeners to be able to take with them?
I think if we go back to the initial thing that I was saying earlier, just about if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life type of thing. As people are trying to find their path, I have so many friends that say that they're just sick of their job. They hate what they do. They're spinning their wheels. And it's not always an easy out. People create life for themselves and they make a certain amount of money, and it's so hard to change that shift and focus on loving what you do rather than just doing what you do to support your family. So, no judgment for anybody who can't, but, finding that balance, finding that play, finding what makes you, again, for me, it might be sniffing the perfume or looking at pretty things, but for you, it could be totally different. So you might love to ski down a mountain. I don't know, whatever you love to do. If you try to focus on that, I think your destiny will sort of find you rather than you looking for your destiny. And I've been blessed, I guess, in my life where I think my destiny found me at a young enough age where I can just enjoy it. And that's also taught me to let go as things might not be perfect in the future. And to know that there will always be waves. It's always going to be good times come with bad and bad times come with good. And it's not always going to be all good all the time. And it's not always going to be all bad all the time. It's going to always be a balance of some kind, but finding happiness in what you can, when you can, making sure that my family, my husband and my children are happy and they're happy because I'm happy. And I know that that's also how it works. So, don't drain yourself. Don't exhaust yourself. And if you are exhausted or drained, find out what you can do in a small step to just take that next leap forward towards smiling and knowing it's all going to be okay.
Well, I love seeing your smile, and this has been a really fun conversation. I appreciate your positivity and the kind of gems that you've given us today on how to find that happiness, even if it's not in the specific work that you're doing, but that you can find happiness in other ways.
If
and
all else fails,
the kitchen.
You can bake a cake and eat the whole cake for yourself, and I'm guaranteeing you'll be psyched.
Exactly. And speaking of that, how can our listeners connect with Sweet Samantha and be able to see the wonderful things that you are doing and the classes that you're teaching and all of that? So how can we find you, Sweet Samantha?
So you can see a lot of my Sweet Samantha stuff, obviously, on my regular website, which is www.sweet-samantha.com. And all of my classes are listed there. All of my work from back in the days when I was making these crazy cakes, you can see all that over there. And lots of information on upcoming events will be posted there as well. I also have my Sweet Samantha Facebook page and my Instagram, which is all under Sweet Sam Cakes. So you can find me there and follow me. I'm not the best at social media. So if you like what you see, share it, send it along, help me grow from that aspect. And hopefully, we can, do great things together in the future.
For sure. And I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. It's nice to see you again on the other side of the camera.
And thank you for your positivity and the energy that you bring. I love seeing all of your amazing, creative and happiness posts. And you're an influence to me as well. Like I said, I woke up, I smiled when I saw your post about the coffee, and I said to myself, I'm going to make myself a cappuccino this morning because, that sounds like a fabulous idea. So sometimes social media is awesome, and people who can influence you in positive ways is a beautiful thing.
I appreciate that. And on that note, that is the point of the Next Chapter podcast, is to provide other women with little nuggets of positivity. Because as we've said in this conversation, the journey isn't always easy. There are ups and downs in the path. And if we can create a community of women supporting each other, inspiring each other, sharing stories that share those moments where, things may not have been easy, and other women can say, oh yeah, she felt it too. I can do this as well. So thank you again for joining the Next Chapter podcast. My name is Andrea Hecht of Fully Informed Life, and I look forward to future conversations. Thank you.